Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the show, we will have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. I'm excited today to have two guests on the show. Dr. Adam Breiner. He has dedicated over 2 decades to advancing naturopathic care through innovative techniques and technologies. With a focus on cutting-edge approaches like hyperbaric oxygen therapy and EEG neurofeedback, Dr. Breiner has become a trusted figure in the realm of neurological health, Lyme disease, and other chronic illnesses. Balancing modern techniques with a foundation in energy medicine, his dedication to natural healing is evident in his practice, Whole Body Medicine, situated within the Breiner Whole Body Health Center in Fairfield, Connecticut. And Tapley Holland is the creator of TruDOSE Technology, a patented intelligent software testing platform that solved a long-standing dosing inaccuracy problem within the field of regenerative medicine. This technology led to uncovering the healing benefits of infusing dose-specific platelets back into the bloodstream, otherwise known as TruDOSE IV platelet therapy. Since 2018, the TruDOSE technology and IV therapy has treated and reversed thousands of patients with unsolvable symptoms and disease conditions. So welcome, Dr. Adam and Tapley. How are you guys today?
Great. Thanks, Diane, for having us.
Yes, I'm excited.
Awesome. So this is fascinating. I'm sure our listeners are going to be like, wow. First of all, some of them may not even know, what IV platelet therapy is and how that all works, and why it's so important in terms of dose specific, but we're going to get into all of that. So let me just start. I gave a little bit of brief background on the two of you, but I'd like to kind of get a little bit more in depth into, who you are and your journey. So Tapley, if you want to start with me, kind of how did you discover this and get into this? And then how did you and Adam get connected?
I've been in the stem cell field for about 20 years, and I don't have a background. About people ask me, I don't have a background in biochemistry, but I've got a photographic memory. So anything that I read, I can catalog. And when I got into this field, stem cells and how the body works was just something that I understand, and I don't know how else to explain it other than that. And just through experience and through seeing these therapies, when I'm talking about stem cells and platelets and using cells from our body and seeing these therapies heal all kinds of patients through my career, the one thing I've always asked myself is, why do these therapies work for some people and why do they not work for some people? Why do we know that? Why does the literature have thousands of articles published on the benefits of these therapies, but why do they also have articles saying that these therapies don't work against, say, saline control? And to me, that was a dosing problem. To make a long story short, I created this software, and with the intelligence and the metrics used to say we can test somebody, like say test your blood with a finger prick and determine, well, what is the dose that you need? And that way the treatment you're getting is no longer this treatment like we do today across every clinic in America, across the globe, where they're treating everybody the same way, like a size 9 shoe. We're doing something specifically for you, for the condition that you're complaining about. And if you do it the right dose the first time, the treatment works. I met, how I met Adam, for the past, I would say 5.5 years, I've been keeping this very, very, very low key, especially when I uncovered the benefits of the IV application. And I said, we need to start telling people. And that that time was around October of 2023. We gathered up some data, and we, had it on showcase at our table at the ILADS, the International Lyme and Associated Disease Society, at that conference. And Adam came by and he took a quick look and said, "Wow, you've got to tell me more." And I think the next 3 days, Adam and I were at each other's hip, and he asked, all kinds of just great questions. And, obviously the guy's experienced. And then I said, "Hey, listen, let's treat some sick patients of yours, because he treats Lyme disease. He treats traumatic brain injury. He treats these things that people don't want to treat." And we came up there just shortly after that conference. We treated some people. He saw some great outcomes and said, "Man, I got to have this."
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. So I learned something already. I mean, I just assumed that IV platelet therapy was dose specific person. Didn't realize that it was a one size fits all, and it makes perfect sense. Like a lot of things with, traditional medicine, like pharmaceuticals, for example, we all get, sometimes get the same dosage as, like, so I weigh 100 pounds as a 200-pound guy. It makes absolute no sense, right?
Right. That is to kind of give everybody a mental picture. We've all, let's say, had, platelet rich plasma is the easiest thing to talk about as far as all the stem cell type therapies. And there's thousands of articles published on its effectiveness, its efficacious, its safety profile. There's nothing more studied in the literature other, I would argue, than that. How do we do that? We take a volume of blood from, say, you, Dr. Breiner, from anybody who's in the office treating, let's say, our hair. We want our hair to grow. And you take a volume of blood, you process in a centrifuge to separate the parts of it, and you get this plasma injection that you want to inject back in your hair. And you hope that your hair will grow. Well, here's how it's done. If 10 of us walk into an office and we wanted to get this plasma injection, they're going to take, let's say, maybe 30 mils of blood from everybody, from you, from me, from Adam, from the guy next door, the guy down the street. And so the question is, does it make sense that if we take 30 mils of blood from everybody, process it in a centrifuge, that we're all going to have the same outcome response? We're all biologically different. What we do with TruDOSE is says, well, we need to be determining what is the dose response for, say, hair growth. And then we need to make sure we get the right amount of blood from somebody. So it might be 85 mils from you. It might be 45 mils from me. It might be 192 from Adam, and so forth and so on. But everybody in this scenario would get the same dose for the same disease condition we're talking about, which is the hair. And guess what? The hair will grow. It's no longer this need to do 3, 4, 5 treatments. And maybe it didn't work. Maybe it did work.
Okay, so I get it now. Yeah. It's dependent on what it takes for me to regrow my hair in terms of, how many mils of blood you're taking versus someone else.
That's right. Because you're biologically different from me, you're biologically different from Adam, but that's not how we do it. It doesn't matter what the therapy is, whether it's platelet rich plasma, whether it's bone marrow, stem cells, umbilical cord stem cells down from Panama. It doesn't matter. This is how we've studied these therapies. This is how we've done investigated within the scientific literature. And so the question is that if we do the same thing to everybody, and if we're not asking dose response, then we're never going to understand the potential of these therapies. I solved that problem.
Right. Right. Some may not work at all. Some may take an extensive length of time to work. Whereas you're saying you might have, I'm just, we can't say based on who it is, but it could work in one session, let's say.
That's right. That's right. And what changed everything for me when I first started the company, I said, we need to start with things that people can understand, which is, when I say people, I mean the patient. We need to say, people understand things from my blood, and they understand, my knee hurts, my shoulder hurts, I want my hair to grow. And that's where the literature is. I mean, that's the bulk of the literature for, say, platelet rich plasma, or at least a lot of it. And within a very short time, we solved that problem. These knee injections no longer needed these 2 and 3 treatments. people were getting relief and symptom free within one treatment. What changed everything for me was I said, what would happen if we did this intravenously? So I had one of my fifth child was neurologically injured. I became autistic literally in front of our eyes overnight. And I was set out to solve, to heal him. And so, make a long story short, I called my wife and I said, I think I know how we're going to fix him. And like every autistic mom, they're going to be the test pilot. And she said, okay, well, what would my dad say? And he's a medical doctor. And I said, he would be totally against this. The idea of putting billions and billions of platelets back in your bloodstream, just say it out loud. It's not a good idea. Given the fact that what we know have been taught that platelets are primarily doing in the bloodstream, which is clotting, right? Turns out that's the farthest from the truth. And my wife was patient number one. I think we're surpassing 12,000, and I can tell you it's the one thing that is helping the body restore its immune system, restoring the repair system. It's helping these people resolve things they've been dealing with for years. And it doesn't matter if it's Lyme disease or emotional trauma. It's helping lots of things.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're actually, I mean, it's been so fascinating. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to go to break in like a minute. So when we come back, I want to get into more about how you guys are working together and how you develop this and the kinds of things that it's used for and all of that. But already, we've mentioned so many interesting, potential conditions that it can work for, and I would imagine there's so many more. And I love it. I love it. So we're going to get into more of that when we come back. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we take a quick break, we'll be back with Dr. Adam Breiner and Tapley Holland. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to reach out to me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Dr. Adam Breiner. He's at www.wholebodymed.com. That's WHOLEBODYMED.com. And you can learn more about Tapley Holland at www.TruDOSEtherapy.com. That's TruDOSE Therapy.com. So when we just went to break, we were talking about, how Tapley, how you came up with all of this. And let's just kind of summarize again, because I think it's a lot for people to wrap their heads around. Explain to us again what is TruDOSE, and then we'll talk about what a patient can expect when they come in for something like this.
Okay, yeah. I mean, TruDOSE is simply it's a technology. You walk into the door to a doctor's office. They're going to take a finger stick and take a few drops of your blood to measure your biology to determine, kind of what's going on with you right now. Basically, your platelet count, that's going to go into a software to determine one thing: how much blood do we draw from you to produce this healing therapy? Okay, that's the TruDOSE technology. It's testing, it's personalizing, and to get you the right dose. The TruDOSE IV therapy is the result of that technology of solving that problem, which led me to uncover what would happen if we give this back to people IV, intravenously, which opened up the application from saying, let's just stick it into my knee and fix my knee or make my hair grow, to now we can put it back into us intravenously. And it's opened up, you just name the disease condition, name the symptom, and chances are it's probably been reversed.
So I think what people are thinking, because this just popped into my head as you were talking, okay, you're going to take, so I'm a 56-year-old woman. So you're going to take my blood and then you're going to basically give it back to me. So why isn't my body working the way it should be working and optimally anyway because of age or whatever has trauma or whatever's happened to me over my lifespan? Wouldn't I think people are thinking like, well, wouldn't they want newer quote
Yeah.
cofactors? And yeah, so explain that.
Go ahead, Adam. I mean, you and I, let's work this. Let's go.
Let's work it, baby. No, it's a great question, Diane, because when I saw Tapley the first time, I saw some of the things he was talking about, and I had already been using some PRP for some brain neurologic conditions and a special technique that we were doing at the office. And so it just made total sense, getting the right concentration, because we weren't really, we were concentrating down, because to do PRP, you have to concentrate the blood down, get the platelets out, and then give them back to the patient. But it was like a duh. Of course, you want to get a higher concentration or get the right concentration, because people's platelets will vary, right? They'll vary due to illness or other factors. So you have to get the right concentration. But of course, why giving back your platelets is going to do anything? And so I think one of the reasons is that, and I know Tapley's talked about this before in some of his presentations, is sort of the hemodynamics of the body, right? So if you have X numbers of billions or trillions of platelets floating around your body at any given moment, you also have a certain amount of, red blood cells and white blood cells, et cetera, and everything is in a balance. And the body's constantly been going through this homeostasis, okay, throughout your illness that may or may not have resolved. So so for instance, someone who's got Lyme disease, like all their, all of their cells and systems have been sort of, they've tried to fight it at one point and then it's kind of gotten used to it. And everything is just kind of keeping the same. So when you're taking out this mass amount of platelets while you're taking out for the processing for the TruDOSE therapy, over that period of time, it takes about a half hour to 45 minutes to make sure we're testing the blood, we're spinning it down. And there's one other step that wasn't mentioned, is that before it actually goes back in, we're testing it again to make sure we got the right therapeutic dose. So by the time that's happened, your platelets have regenerated in the body. They've already like replenished. So that homeostasis is back to where it was before. And now all of a sudden we're throwing in billions upon billions of platelets who have a lot more functions than just clotting. They actually have a lot of immune functions. They work with the cytokine system. They work on actually monitoring and calling in the rest of your immune system when it comes to viruses and bacteria. They also carry most of our body's like serotonin, so a lot of neurotransmitters. They carry brain-derived neurotrophic factor to help stimulate new nerves to grow, stimulate blood vessels to grow. Like all this stuff is coming in, and it's like they've been out on vacation for a week. Sometimes when you're in your house and you're like, you don't notice the clutter, you don't notice like the paint peeling off the outside and the shutters because you just whatever. I'm used to it, and you just kind of live with it. And then you go away on vacation, you go to like a really nice hotel and everything's amazing and posh. And you come back, you're like, holy crap, this is dump.
Yep.
So it's like it's like the platelets come back, they're over there and they're going like, whoa, we have, you got Lyme you're dealing with here. You Epstein-Barr you're dealing with here. You have a neurologic condition you're dealing with here. And everything has to get reset now and recalibrated to that new reality. And I the first time Tapley was, describing it to me, one of the things that struck me is it's like, how sometimes your computer is like spinning. You see the little spinny ball? It's like you're clicking the mouse and things are just not running well. That's like the inflammatory state that hasn't, or the immune state that hasn't completely resolved. The computer is stuck. The software system is just not great. And what you're doing with this is you're hitting Control Alt Delete. And boom, everything
so it's the
reboots.
volume. Yeah, I understand now. I wasn't taking into consideration the factor of time. So you draw the blood. Now the person's sitting there waiting for you to do what you need to do with the platelets. And the body, of course, is already making new ones to compensate. Just like when you go give blood, right? To
Right.
compensate for that. And now you're putting in a mega dose of, what you took out essentially. So it's that compounding effect.
Yeah. And, you know, this is always like the best question. It was my blood. You took it out of me, you put it back in me. How is it doing this? Right. It goes to the heart of what we were not taught about what our platelets actually doing.
Mhm.
Are they just doing clotting? Is that it? Because if you could look at, just ask any doctor, they only use a platelet count for two things. Excessive platelets means that you're at risk of clotting. Too low of platelets means that you're probably going to bleed out. If you go back to literature that's pre 1900s, they knew then that platelets are they do way more functions than just clotting. Okay, what are they doing? They're basically surveilling the entire bloodstream, and they're looking for two things: threats and repairs. And when they see either one of those, they initiate the repair system, which is how we heal ourselves from everything, a paper cut to a brain injury, or the immune system, which is how we defend ourselves. Neither one of those two systems initiate until the platelet has actually come in contact with a problem and says, white blood cells, I need you now. So when he says we're in this inflammatory state, that means that over time, over the years, from emotional trauma, and I had thyroid disease in my 20s, Crohn's in my 30s, endometriosis in my late 30s, lupus in my 40s, etc. These are the result of unresolved problems that the body, the platelets had tried to address at one point in your life, but they couldn't fix it. So there's that spinning wheel. And so it leads to another problem and then another problem. And those problems lead to symptoms, and those leads to everything over the course of a lifetime. Well, when you take those platelets and the blood out and you remove components of it and you give back, like you said, the mega dose, it's like the platelets are coming back into the body and seeing everything for the first time again. And the term is called immune recognition, repair recognition. That is reset. It's able to say, oh, we got an issue here. And here's the importance of what I need to fix first. I know you walked into the office with knee pain, but that's actually not the problem. I need to fix the most important thing first. And so the systemic effect of what it's fixing first, we know that. And so I can look at a platelet count and within reason almost guess what's wrong with you. Whereas
Wow.
you go down to the Quest lab and they say, well, your platelets are high. You might want to get some medication to make sure you don't have excessive clotting. So it goes to the heart of what we were never taught about what platelets actually do.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Do people actually feel something?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of patients we've seen will experience what has been known as like the shift right afterwards. They're like, "Oh, I feel something," or "I'm seeing things more clearly," or they just start like we had a guy who had a traumatic brain injury, and he was not doing well at all. He was very anxious even to come in to do TruDOSE. It took a lot just to get him. He finally came in. He did it. He left smiling. It was like, and then when I did a follow up, 3, 4 weeks later, he was back. He was back to work, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I just feel so much better now." And so it can happen. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it definitely happens.
Most of the people who shift like immediately have this emotional underlying distress from PTSD, from things in the childhood, things that you don't want to talk about. So real quickly, about 25% of people, they see something like before they walk out of the door. The next
Wow.
25% are going to be between the next 24 hours. The next 25% is when the first 24 to 72 hours. The next 15% is that 3-day to 10-day window. And that 5%, the remaining percent of people is basically they're not in any type of distress, and they don't
Okay.
realize that things are being fixed until 6 to 8 weeks down the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a
Wow.
great number of
That-
people are seeing effects really quickly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're already to another break because this is so fascinating. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Dr. Adam Breiner and Tapley Holland. We're back in the Dr. Diane show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. I am talking today with Dr. Adam Breiner. You can learn more about him at www.wholebodymed.com. That's WHOLEBODYMED.com. And Tapley Holland, you can learn more about him at www.TruDOSEtherapy.com. That's TruDOSEtherapy.com. So before we took our last break, we were talking a little bit about, whether or not people actually feel the effects of TruDOSE therapy. And it seems, certainly it's individualized. Like you talk to different people are more sensitive to certain things, or I guess depending on, the level of disease that they're in, how much trauma they've had. Some people might have a super immediate effect of feeling something. Other people, it might take a while, or like with supplements. For me, like I'm a person who takes supplements, I rarely feel anything from them, but that doesn't mean that they're not working. And why I'm taking them obviously is preventative reasons, and to have better health. So regardless of whether people feel something, I think it's more about understanding the technology and what it's doing to help you behind the scenes. But I bet people are thinking, okay, you know, what, who is this good for? Like, what kind of chronic diseases have you guys treated and seen? And let's just talk about some case studies that you have.
Yeah, I could speak to some of that. I mean, Tapley's been involved with what, over 12,000 now, you say. So I think he's got a little, a few stories probably in his quiver. But I'll just tell you from the patients that we've seen, and again, I've treated a lot of different types of conditions over the years. And one of the things I notice about TruDOSE is that it's actually really healing, because it follows the laws of cure, like Herring's rules. Have you ever heard of that? Your body heals from in to out, from most important to least important, top down, in the reverse order in which it appears. And that occurs because the TruDOSE is actually, it's you healing yourself. And that's really key. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. We had we had an autistic kid, okay? And this boy he's done stem cells in the past, which is interesting, and has had some, positive results, but that takes, it takes over a year, maybe sometimes, for people to see that. Well, after his first TruDOSE session, his mom was like, wow, his speech was already getting better. The teachers were noticing that the stimming that he had was gone. Even some of the supplements that he was needing didn't need it anymore. So you talk about supplements.
Wow.
Sometimes people don't
Yeah.
need that anymore. We had back to, kids again. We had somebody who had a learning disability, okay, reading and just some cognitive issues. Within, by the next day, was already like came back, said, "Mom, I'm reading better." She's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And the teacher, she's going to ask the teachers to just keep an eye on it, because Tapley said, this happens a lot with kids, so just keep an eye on them and how they're doing, and how they want to do stuff or not do stuff. And well, the teacher got back and said, "I was just going to contact you because what's going on?" He's like, "Reading is crazy different now, like, wanting to do things, not fighting, like trying to do stuff." um and within a month or so, got his first 100 on a math test ever. So that's just learning disabilities. I know Tapley's seen people with dyslexia, people, a lot of that just reversing. So you're having this change in the brain, happening. um Lyme disease, okay, I treat a lot of that. Obviously, we have a lot of Lyme disease in this area. And one of the things that's going to happen for some of these patients is that is going to wake up that immune system to the infections. And so they can herx, they can have days where they're just not feeling good as their body starts fighting this again, or fighting
Right. You
it
feel
properly.
worse before you feel better.
Yeah, the Herxheimer reaction.
Yeah.
But some of them were like, we had one woman, she was always having so much fatigue, falling asleep. She said she was up the whole ride home, able to stay awake, and that never reversed. She had vasculitis. She had all these pains in her legs. That was gone. That's all just after her first TruDOSE. That some of these things took a little bit of time, but mostly it happened fairly quickly.
Other one patient, the hemophiliac.
Oh yeah. Huh. So she had Lyme. She had a lot of things going on, but ended up having TruDOSE. And within a few weeks after TruDOSE was unfortunately hit by a car, hit and then ran
Jeez.
over by the car. So double whammy. Hemophilia. So right, so she should bleed out. Went to the hospital. They're checking her out in the hospital, and they're gathering all the other doctors around. They're saying, "Come over here, take a look at this person." They're like, and she was hitting the spleen, and they're like, "There's no bruising. There's no." They're like, "What's going on here? Like, why
Wow.
isn't she bleeding out, and why isn't she all bruised? Because then." And she's like, "Well, I did this TruDOSE thing, you know." And they're like, "What?" Like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it can't be
Um,
that.
can't be that. I had another lady, so she said she felt she was fairly healthy, right? So she was just kind of like, you know, her daughter mentioned you should do it. Okay, fine. She had chronic lifelong migraines. Um, I didn't really think that it did much for her, but a month or so later, or a few months later, when her friend says, you haven't been complaining about your migraines. She's like, oh my God, I haven't had one. She's like, it's gone. And then she happened to be at her eye doctor's and said, I want you to check my eyes again because she had macular degeneration. She said, I want you to just compare my films to the last year. And he's like, well, why? She's like, oh, could you just do it? So he looks in the eyes and he goes, what, what, what? He said, it's gone. He said, what happened? He couldn't believe it. He's like, your macular degeneration reversed. And that just
Wow.
doesn't happen. We had a guy with Parkinson's. So he had his first TruDOSE. When he came in for a second one, I said, well, how are you doing there? Like, he's like talking now. He wasn't talking really the first one. His going to get speech. He says, my tremoring's better. After a second TruDOSE, we also did another application of it intranasally, and you just could see his eyes just open up. He's like, oh, he was like feeling better right then and there. And then the family in the next couple of days are saying, oh, he's walking more unassisted. He's getting up and down. I mean, the list goes on. I had this I can't even talk about cognitive improvements. We're actually doing our own little internal study looking at uh, uh, um, neurocognitive testing before and after and a whole bunch of patients. At some point, Tapley and I will put it together in a paper, but we are definitely seeing people's brain function improve.
Hmm.
I mean, it is noticeable. And we've had people who are like, you're saying that they're back to their 30s or even younger in their brain function. They're like, oh, I'm doing what I was doing back at the time when I was, working in Silicon Valley. I have another guy's investment banker. He's like, man, I'm sharp. I'm really sharp. So um I had a patient. So he had Lyme disease, Bartonella, and stroke. He was not doing well. I'm just gonna see if I can pull this up here. Um, this is his wife. This is what his wife had to say. She said a few days after the infusion, people started noticing how much more conversational he was.
Wow.
His memory is slowly starting to improve. Started to speak in complete sentences, asking people questions, smiling, waving, saying hi, becoming more engaged, more aware of what's going around him. He started to make funny comments, his typical old self. Since he had a stroke in November of 2022, he's had semi paralysis in his left side, and his left hand became more relaxed. It's not as claw like. And you were saying like he couldn't really see out of the side of his one side of his eyes and wasn't really noticing anything like TVs and stuff. Now he's like looking at the TV, commenting on it, making jokes, smiling. He's at assisted living, and they're like, we never seen anybody get better. What is going on? Like they don't
Right.
see people get better there. He's getting better.
Yeah.
The one
Yeah.
thing that the one thing if I jump in is that you're what he's describing are not just a case series of people with knee pain. Individually, these people would be a case study by themselves because of the severity of their condition, most likely the things they've tried in the past, and things that have failed, right? And one of the things that and he and I've talked about this, but now he's refreshing my memory, just how immediate and how soon and how dramatic the impact is, just on a lot of domains for each individual, whether it's walking and cognitive, whether it's thinking and emotional state. Um, those are like magnitudes of improvement in a very short time. In a patient population where you're talking about stroke and Lyme and Parkinson's and cognitive this and never return from that, and hemophilia. Uh, so it just speaks to not just, hey, how great the therapy is, but also just what our bodies can do and how the body can heal itself if you give it what it needs and just get out of its way.
Right.
That's what I was going to say. As we're talking, imagine some people are thinking, oh, this is too good to be true. Like, these guys are saying that this heals anything and everything, and all these, from, something simple, like you got knee pain, to people with diseases that are incurable and blah, blah, blah. But when you think about it, like exactly like what you just said, Tapley, it makes sense because it's the body healing itself, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, we've come up with this new drug or this new thing, whatever you might want to say. Or it's more like, okay, you're taking what the person's um already given to work with in terms of the things that are in their blood, immune system, all of that, and basically just supercharging it and giving it back to them.
Absolutely.
So that's why it would heal anything. In my mind, that's the way my mind thinks about it. Yes, of course, it would heal anything because your body's been designed to heal, anything, including severe diseases. It's just that we're bombarded with so many other things and trauma and whatever
Right.
that we're unable to do that.
I mean,
Right.
that is the thing, is that and I've seen all these things. I'm like, how is this? And I finally just asked myself, well, how did we survive as a species for 2,000 years
Yeah.
without any medical advancements, technology, pharmaceutical medicines? How did we do it? It's because the body is a great thing.
Amazing.
It
Yeah.
is, and
Yeah.
it can overcome this stuff, but it can't do it when we're bombarded with different medications. Why do they work?
Yep.
Do they not working? Foods, emotional. We're the time we live in now is simply not the same time as our grandparents or the people before
No,
them.
not at
Period.
all. Not at all. All right, we got to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Dr. Adam Breiner and Tapley Holland. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. I'm talking today with Dr. Adam Breiner. His website is www.wholebodymed.com, and Tapley Holland, and his website is www.TruDOSEtherapy.com. That's TruDOSEtherapy.com. So we've been talking about a lot of fascinating things. And one thing I wanted to circle back to, we've kind of mentioned off and on throughout the show, stem cells. And I'm sure people are wondering, how is this different? Why would you do this versus stem cells? So any experience you guys want to just give to the listeners about that?
Adam, you jump this one?
Yeah, you could show. I will say that we've had patients use stem cells over the years, so we know quite a bit. And I would just let me just say, from just an observer's perspective, I believe that we are seeing very similar results, maybe faster than with perhaps even than stem cells alone with the TruDOSE. And that's a great thing. That's a very great thing. We've had like I said, we had one autistic patient that had stem cells, another one more just recently, and they were talking about because I said, so what have you noticed? Because you've done like X number of rounds of stem cells. They're like, yeah, it's helped. Yeah, but it takes like 6, 8, 9 months, and they start seeing some of those improvements. But they never saw anything work this fast.
Mm.
And they're getting like noticeable improvements where people around the kids are noticing, oh my gosh, like they're interacting with other kids now when they wouldn't do that before. The stimming, things like that. But I'll let Tapley, speak to it as well, because Tapley, quite a bit about stem cells. Have worked with docs with that even before TruDOSE.
Well, it's not like stem cells don't work, right? It's the problem is that they've been given at the wrong order of people's conditions, and that they're heal whatever they're trying to heal themselves from. And what I mean by that is, let's just say if I break my bone, a simple break, I fall off my bike and I break my arm, the body's going to go through a sequential process, an orderly process to heal that fracture, right? It's going to like clean the wound, immune system's going to come in, make sure the coast is clear. They're just going to make sure adequate blood supply is there. And then once those things are done, it's like, okay, we've got the foundation. Now let's bring in stem cells, right? The stem cells are the last part of healing. They're like the trim guy and the painter when you're building a house. You don't bring them in when you're doing rough grade. And the problem is we give stem cells when people are stuck in chronic conditions, which means we're stuck at like steps early in the process of healing that never got to continue on. And they're still stuck at like earlier steps. And so we give stem cells to people who are stuck in early steps of the healing process from things that happened maybe 10 years ago, 30 years ago, a year ago. And we're basically bypassing the body's natural order of events and process that it has to and it must undergo. That's not me saying that. That's a fact. So the reason that TruDOSE has such and the platelets have such an effect is because guess who's the one thing that actually starts those events to begin? It's the platelets. Mm-hmm. So you're basically restarting the body's process to go look at things that are unresolved and go start the process again. And if you had all the money in the world, you'd give yourself this therapy, and then you wait a few weeks and then give yourself some stem cells. Then you'd have the greatest therapy on the planet from your own body.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I've actually never had that explained to me before about stem cells. I would imagine, no, honestly, I would imagine that probably a lot of practitioners don't even know that that's the mechanism, right?
That's not me, riffing. That's just how the body works.
Right. Yep. So another question that I'm sure people are thinking, have you seen any side effects? I mean, are there any side effects to this treatment that come up or that people have to deal with or worry about?
Here's how I answer that question, because obviously I'm not a practitioner. If any, to date, nothing negative or adverse has been reported to date. It doesn't matter if it's end-stage kidney failure, autism, 2-year-old little child that's blind, to the 98-year-old man who's had stroke. If anything adverse had been present, I definitely probably would not be here right now. I mean, it's your own blood, right? It's your own blood. So I would say the safety profile on your blood has been well established. The efficacy of PRP in the literature is well established. And now we've had, thousands of patients that nothing, I mean, it's rare that nobody responds. I would say I don't want to say never, but it doesn't happen that nobody responds from a single treatment. And nothing adverse has been reported yet.
Even if someone doesn't have a response, where my mind goes is maybe the body is healing something that they weren't even aware of or had a symptom for. Because both of you guys were saying, listen, the body's going to heal what it thinks is the most important thing to heal first. Well, you might think that that's your knee pain, but it might be something completely different, maybe related to your gut. Who knows? And you don't have a symptom for that yet.
Yeah, I think that is probably a very important thing to note, because some people, everyone's going to say, well, I'm doing TruDOSE and I want it to heal this. And like, oh, didn't do what I want to do. Well, come on. Again, we were talking about is your body healing itself, right? So if you think if your body can heal it, TruDOSE is going to help it. So, but it could be something deeper, right? Something deeper. You didn't even know you had like this sclerotic liver or something. And maybe that starts healing and you're like, oh, I didn't get this other effect that I wanted, but it will eventually come if your body has that ability. We're just unleashing your body's natural healing abilities.
One of the best examples to drill down exactly what you're saying, because this is an important point, is that the body's going to heal what it considers important, not why you walk in the door. Okay. And I can tell you on the list of things that the body considers least important, and we have the data, out of the 12 organ systems, number 11, which would be the second least important, is going to be your bones and your tendons and your muscles. Number 12 is your skin. So if you have bone problems, like my joint hurts, it's already made its way through the other things. To give you a great example, I remember her like it was yesterday. It was patient number 6. She was 80 something. And I'm not going to say her name, but she walked in, she wanted her tremors to go away from her Parkinson's. Talking to her, she says, "Oh, by the way, I've also had lupus for 30 years and rheumatoid arthritis." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So to make a long story short, tremors went away for about a week and they kind of came back, but not as aggressive. Her memory improved. The neurological exam she took showed it. All these things improved on her that she just didn't realize it. If you just read her journal, you would see it. She came back about 90 days later and says, "Well, I don't know if it worked because my tremors came back, but I did want to show you this. Here's my blood data for the past 10 years. I've gotten ANA counts for my lupus every 3 months for the past 30 years. Here's my blood data for the past 10 years. It's never been normal. This is the first time it's ever been negative for lupus." And I'm
Wow.
like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, isn't that important? No, I'm only concerned about the tremors.
That's right. So you have to kind of
Yeah.
help people.
Yeah.
There you go. There it is right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And typically, how often do people have to do this? And I know that that's like a very generalized question, right? Because you might say, well, Diane, you might only have to do it once, but somebody else might have to do it for a series of times.
It's real simple. Here's what we found treating this many patients. Every 8 to 12 weeks, do at least 4.
Okay.
Don't even do it if you're going to do one. Say, let me try it out.
Well, but not every 8 to 12 weeks, do 4 of them, meaning do one somewhere in the 8 to 12 week range. I don't
Yes.
want people getting
And then do
confused.
another one 8 to 12 weeks later.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
So like 4 times a year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone may have like more of acute, like they had just pure like a stroke or something, that they can do it a little bit sooner so they can, stimulate that healing. But yeah, that's pretty much a good, especially if someone, let's say, has Lyme or some other disease state. You don't want to keep going through herxing non-stopping, right? You want to let your body move through that, upward trajectory. And also another thing we didn't even mention is, because this wasn't a thing back when you started this Tapley years ago, which is the long haul COVID and the vaccine injured from COVID, right? So those people are also responding to this, right? Because that's very much a vascular inflammatory, in just basic inflammatory type of condition that's going on. And so that's why this type of therapy can be helpful.
It's just putting those COVID long hauler inflammatory fires out almost immediately.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, 4 times. You got to give yourself 4 times. If you have a condition that's mysterious, I don't know what to do. It's, that's code for commit to 4 treatments every 8 to 12 weeks, do one. And you're such at a different point after that end of that 4 treatment, make a decision. Is it maintenance or keep going?
Right.
83% of the people just keep going.
And even people just want peak performance, just to feel
Yeah, I
better
was
and
gonna
be,
say that too.
anti-aging type thing. Yeah.
That can be a whole nother TTR show for sure, for sure. Well, I want to thank you guys both, Dr. Adam and Tapley, for joining me today. This has been so fascinating and interesting. And again, I'm sure people are going to be reaching out to you guys and to learn more. But thank you both for being on and sharing all the information. And I want to thank all of you for joining into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, and I will see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.